for me, when I started my new company and I had my own real QuickBooks file, right? And I had auto entry hooked up to it, and I spent money on my debit card. So it's the first transaction ever for my business, right? The email receipt comes in. I forward the email receipt to auto entry. Auto entry automatically scans it and shoves it into my QuickBooks. And then QuickBooks automatically matches it to the bank feed. And I'm standing up and down in my kitchen just screaming like, this stuff really works. Like, because before it's all been theory, right? It's never been my real data. And I think that's the realization for me is like all these things we've been talking about and I've been talking about over the last 6 years is here today, and it works. It really works. And that for me is the biggest eye opener.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a fantastic one. Our guest is the co-host of the popular Cloud Accounting Podcast, David Leary. Welcome to the show.
Michael, thanks for having me. I should actually just have you host my podcast because you have a much better podcast hosting personality and voice than I think I do.
Come on.
I should have Blake swap you out for me.
Come on. No, it's so great to have you on the show. And I'm looking forward to sharing who you are. And I know a lot of our listeners already listen to your podcast. It's a very popular podcast and very valuable. But I'm hoping you'll find some new listeners in our listenership as well. But before we get into all of that, David, tell us a little bit about you and your career journey leading up to this point.
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I was in Intuit almost 22 years. I left about 20 months ago or so from Intuit. But my career at Intuit was all QuickBooks. So I've grown up in this space. Started when I was about 22 years old. Or I don't even know if I was 22 yet. So I was 21 when I started Intuit. I did tech support for QuickBooks DOS. So to age things a little bit, right? So I started out doing tech support for QuickBooks DOS, the first QuickBooks Windows versions, then eventually CD-ROMs came out, right? So I've been through these technological changes along the way. Tech support really led into, in talking to small business owners and accountants, really led into doing quality assurance for QuickBooks. So then I got into quality assurance and testing QuickBooks, and that led into some automation of the testing of QuickBooks, which led into some engineering work, and I actually built an app on the platform. And then that led into some marketing and social media type stuff. And then eventually I got really heavily involved in the developer program at Intuit. So the last 6 years at Intuit, I spent my time building all those add-on apps, the auto entries, the T-sheets, you name the Clios, all the apps that add on to QuickBooks online. So I really worked on building out that ecosystem, the Bill.coms of the world, et cetera. All the apps most of your listeners are familiar with and using. So that's what I spent the last 6 years doing. And then eventually just kind of went on my entrepreneurial journey. So I'm now, which is great because I've spent time talking to accountants. I've spent time talking to small business owners. I've spent time working with apps. But now I'm a small business owner. So I'm on that journey, right? I'm small business 101, Chase wouldn't open a bank account for me. So that's kind of the journey I've been on the last 18 months or so. And then have the podcast. And we can talk about that separately, I guess, if it's part of the journey, but it's almost its own standalone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I mean, what's remarkable is your knowledge of the industry from the tech side of things and as well business application. I mean, you can't build tech without knowing the business use and the use case. So I think that's what makes the Cloud Accounting Podcast so valuable is that you understand all these different angles that the listener doesn't really maybe have time to even take on and understand. So it's remarkable. From your standpoint right now, what's been your biggest revelation since you launched the Cloud Accounting Podcast about the industry?
So this is more of my revelation being the small business owner. If I really think about my career when I was doing QA work, I was doing engineering work, or when I was even doing tech support, right? It's all fake. right? Or even working with new apps I was launching. I'm taking somebody's problem, creating fake data in QuickBooks, right? And creating fake reports and working with fake data. So for me, when I started my new company and I have my own real QuickBooks file, right? And I had auto entry hooked up to it, and I spent money on my debit card. So it's the first transaction ever for my business, right? The email receipt comes in. I forward the email receipt to auto entry. Auto entry automatically scans it and shoves it into my QuickBooks. And then QuickBooks automatically matches it to the bank feed. And I'm standing up and down in my kitchen just screaming like, this stuff really works. Like, because before it's all been theory, right? It's never been my real data. And I think that's the realization for me is like all these things we've been talking about and I've been talking about over the last 6 years is here today, and it works. It really works. And that for me is the biggest eye opener.
Wow. And you know what? There's not that many people that could be able to go through that experience to see all of these things. You know, you worked with the fake data, you worked with all the technology, and then actually to be the one looking at it and saying, this stuff all works. I mean, wow. I mean, from a power of information, a power of knowledge, and a power of perspective, that must have been an incredible moment actually in your career.
Yeah. And I think the second half of that, the double-edged sword, is because I'm working with my real company and my real data now, my tolerance level for crappy apps has gone downhill. Like I used to just, something's not right. It's an app, it's my fake data, whatever. But now when I use an app that does something wrong, it can mess up my real data. And so my tolerance level, like I just do not have it anymore for apps that are lesser quality.
Interesting. Very interesting. It reminds me of a story, and I don't know if it's a true story or not, but when they were developing the Honda minivan, the chief engineer rode around the United States in a minivan for like a year with his family, or like 6 months, a long time with his family, because he wanted to go in and understand what it would be like to spend most of his life with a family in a van in America, to understand the needs and all the different things that would need to go into this van to make it remarkable and extraordinary product. And it kind of, you stand out in a similar way. It's a little bit of a reverse. You spent all this time with the tech and learning what was needed and what's out there and how it worked and helping people make it work better. But now you're actually the user of it, and it's another perspective. You're like the fellow in the minivan going, hey, this is good. That's not good. Get rid of that coat hanger. We don't need this part of the steering wheel. Powerful place to be with your perspective. Your knowledge is very valuable.
Well, I think this, like, kind of relating to that story is I've always said that a lot of my career success was because I did tech support, right? Like I gained that deep understanding of QuickBooks. I gained that deep understanding of small business owners, right? And accountants that are using QuickBooks and the pains they were having, right? And by understanding that deeply, it's just really carried my career. Right? And I kind of feel like the same for bookkeepers, right? Listeners of your show, right? At some level in the accounting industry, bookkeeping gets kind of that like, oh, you're the bottom rung kind of attitude, right? You're the bottom rung. You're just the bookkeeper in this organization, blah, blah, blah. But to some extent, like the knowledge and the experience of bookkeepers getting about the company, right? And about the inner workings of the workflows and all the business units, et cetera, at a company, the bookkeeper actually can build on those skill sets later on in their career. Right, because you can't, like, people knock the grunt work too much, right? But it builds such a fundamental base.
It does, and I think people discount it when they're doing it, right? It's like, why am I doing this? But I think it's a positive, and I think a mental health way of saying, anything you do today is going to provide the answers tomorrow, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. That's life experience that at some point will provide credit. Like, wow, look at this. I got this amazing asset that I used to think was awful, right? So it's interesting. Now, your perspective is that you understand the tech. And so when you launched your business and you opened your account, you got all that little tech stack set up, you had a lot of knowledge already and you were able to go right at it. There's many changes that are happening in the industry for bookkeeping business owners, new tech, new apps, new ways of doing business, things that work, things that don't work, things that break. What's your recommendation to them in terms of being able to be someone who can make the whole tech stack work and be able to navigate through to what is good and what's not good and what's going to be valuable for my customers or not valuable for my customers? Any recommendations on that?
I mean, I think you have to constantly have a couple experiments on the back burner going, right? And what I mean by that, it makes sense in some cases to do that. I can't use 3 payroll companies at the same time for my company, right? I just can't use 3 different payroll apps. You can't run payroll 3 different ways, right? You kind of need that in one system consistently for the whole entire year. But for example, there's a lot of these new expense credit card, expense tracking, debit, prepaid cards that are out there. I have 4 of them. And I kind of run them side by side. I use this one some month, use this one the other month. So there's things like that you could do to learn and use multiple apps to learn, right? And so you settle on the 1 or 2 for your stack, right? And then the same is true, I guess, with clients, right? You could, if you have multiple clients, you could put 2 clients on this payroll service and 2 on this payroll service and run them side by side, right? Until you decide, I like this payroll service a little better and I'll put all my clients on that one. But I think it's a matter of just doing small experiments till you figure out what's the best solution for you and your clients. And sometimes what the best solution is for 6 of your clients is not the right solution for the other 50. And then you have to have a different solution for those 50.
Great advice, and that is being a little bit of a scientist, a little bit of a lab tech in parts of your business, and carving out time to do it. Now, let's talk a little bit about your show, the Cloud Accounting Podcast. Help us understand what that show is all about, and then I know a bit about it, but I'd love for our listener to know a little bit about it.
Yes, so I co-host it with Blake Oliver. So my background, as we just talked about, is all QuickBooks. Pretty much, I came up with the QuickBooks, apps, etc. Blake Oliver, the co-host, he actually came up through the Xero world. So Blake, believe it or not, was a cellist. And he, once he got out of music school, he realized, wow, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to have a career as a cellist. So he fell into bookkeeping, eventually created a bookkeeping firm. He was essentially Xero's first or second Xero advisor in the United States. And so he built a cloud accounting firm. He eventually became a CPA. He sold his accounting firm. He worked for Armino, I think, for a while. So he's had a career as an accountant and bookkeeper on the Xero side. So if you take both of us, we're on these 2 trains and we're kind of collided here, both with very separate backgrounds, but similar backgrounds. So our show, what we do is every week, 45 minutes to an hour, an accountant or bookkeeper can listen to our show and we just summarize all the week's news. And we bring our 2 perspectives, him being an accountant who's had an accounting firm, being a CPA, his experience of dealing with a tech-forward CPA, I would argue, and then my experience coming up through the app side and small businesses and the QuickBooks world. And we talk about all the news that happens every week. So just saves time. As you're an accountant or bookkeeper, you can listen to us in your car ride and be on top of a week's worth of news.
It's remarkable. I love the story of the 2 of you and these different experiences, and I think that's why it's become so popular. Give us a little sample. What's the latest? What's current events? What's going on right now? What are you and Blake talking about?
What did we talk about this week's show that just went out? We talked about obviously the QuickBooks Live is still a very, very hot topic. Right. That's been the story of the year. We just talked about it again this previous week and the week before. It's really those new business models of this. Hey, we're a SaaS app, right? But we also provide a service. So QuickBooks Live, for your listeners that aren't aware of it, Intuit is going to offer QuickBooks Online with a bookkeeper service, a bookkeeping service. So you will basically be able to have your QuickBooks Live and you can have an appointment with a bookkeeper and a little video will pop up in your QuickBooks. And you can get your bookkeeping services done through a bookkeeper provided by Intuit. But they're not the only ones doing that model. A lot of people are doing, I call them accounting firms with engineers. So you have Bench, you have Pilots, the BotKeeper, Ceteris. I'm trying to think of some other ones off the top of my head. Scale Factor, right? So there's a lot of these companies that have a lot of VC funding and they're building a similar model. It's software with a service and humans all bundled up together to do your bookkeeping.
It's definitely something that's been being chatted about in the Successful Bookkeeper Facebook group. It's definitely topical and a lot of people chatting about it. So what's your take on it?
So I think it has to be done. And what I mean, but because these companies, QuickBooks, et cetera, they're public companies. They have competitors trying to do this. So they have to do it because there's competitors doing it. And then if you think about it, if you're a SaaS software company, you're going to take people from a 40-month subscription, right, and move them into a $200, maybe a $300 a month subscription, maybe a $400 a month subscription. And if you think about that from a bookkeeping perspective, that's like taking your clients, whatever you're charging them this month, per month, and moving your clients 4x the revenue, right? Because you're adding some extra services. And essentially that's what Intuit, a public company, is doing. Now, with that said, they're also filling a gap, I think, if you think about the bell curve of the market, right? I think there's people, and I've heard your show, you guys talk about bookkeepers that go niche, right? And if you go niche, now you can start really value billing, you can do fixed fees, you can raise your prices. There's a lot of benefits to going niche. Then on the other end of the market, I think, is scale, right? And I think there's, so you either compete on the niche side for high dollar, small amount of clients, or you compete on the high volume, low cost, high volume side. And the high volume side is hard to do now if you don't have tech, right? It's very hard. You can't do it with just data entry alone, right? You can't compete on the data entries. You can't type fast enough, essentially. So if you think about like the bell curve of accountants and bookkeepers that are out there that are servicing small business clients, the ones that are niche are comfortable. Like they don't need this service. Like QuickBooks Live service, they're not scared of it. They don't see it as a threat. I think you have the people on the low end, and you'll see these in the Facebook groups. You may even have them in your group, right? Where people are, hey, I started a bookkeeping practice. How do I get clients, right? Maybe they don't even want to run their own firm. They just want to be a bookkeeper, right? I just want to do bookkeeping. I think something like QuickBooks Live and these services could be a good fit for them because they can just do bookkeeping. They don't have to go hunt for clients, sell clients, charge clients. They just show up and do the bookkeeping, right? I think the people that are fighting it the most and are probably in your forums, et cetera, that are grumbling the most are probably the people that kind of fall in between those two others because they probably have a practice that's big enough and established, but they haven't gone niche yet. And they're the ones that really probably see this as a threat to their business model. And it's just a matter of, figuring out how they move forward and what those next steps are. Is it adopting more technology and trying to compete on price, or is it figuring out how to provide more services and compete on service? But if you do nothing, like these accounting firms with engineers are going to probably eat your lunch if you do nothing.
Remarkable. I love the take and agree with much of it. And it's change in the industry. It's change. With change comes opportunity. And the best thing that anybody can do is find out more and more and more and be aware of it and understand it and get these different takes. And that's why being a listener of this podcast and the Clown Accounting podcast is fantastic because you can start to learn more and understand, well, what is the angle? What's the opportunity? Things will always change. And so this is just more change. It's nothing new. It's just more change, but how is it going to impact you and how can you either embrace it or do something that will enable you to remain competitive and have a sustainable business in the future?
The interesting model that maybe some of these models when they first started launching didn't consider, but what we're starting to see is there's some accountants and bookkeepers that are actually utilizing these services as part of their practice. So you might get a client that maybe isn't the right fit for you today. Maybe they can't afford you today. Maybe they're just too new. You could actually punt them over to QuickBooks Live, right? And then, hey, I'll talk to you in 2 years, right? When you grow or you're more stable, right? Or you're utilizing a service like QuickBooks Live to have some base set of work done. And then you just worry about advising your clients.
Exactly. So, it's like a capacity. It's actually an opportunity to have some capacity and put clients that don't fit your model right now over to something and know that they're being handled professionally and getting the services that they need and then still be able to maintain the relationship with them for additional services or a future engagement.
Yeah. And this model is not something that's just exclusive to accounting, right? As far as SaaS software goes, you're starting to see this model pop up. Clio Law Firm Software is also doing it. They're starting to head down this path where they're going to play middleman between people that need legal aid and lawyers. And there's a vast number of people that need legal aid that can't seem to find lawyers. And there's a bunch of lawyers that are really bad at getting clients because they're just bad at it. And so Clio's going to come in the middle and play matchmaker. In the same way, QuickBooks is doing that, right? They're going to take small businesses that seem to can't find an accountant or bookkeeper, and they're going to connect them with the bookkeepers that can't seem to find clients. Right. So this model is not just exclusive to the accounting software industry. It's starting to happen in the SaaS software industry across the board. I mean, you could argue that's what Uber is. It's SaaS software with humans doing some of the work, and they're playing middleman. You can argue WeWork is kind of like that. It's still a traditional business model with kind of software mixed in. Mm-hmm. It's not a pure software play anymore. And that's kind of one of the articles we covered last week was about how the SaaS gold rush is over. And all these apps, QuickBooks, the Xeros of the world, they've all been growing at 40% a year for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. We can only do that so far, right? And eventually you're at the tipping point. And so and this is from an outside analyst who just happened to use the accounting industry in his examples, but his thought process is eventually you can't keep growing. So you're going to have to start adding other services to grow more. Right. And so if you ate the desktop software world, all the SaaS software apps ate all the desktop software world, if they want to keep growing, they're going to have to start eating the manual process world. Right. And they're going to have to provide those types of services bundled in. So the long term, you're probably going to see even more of this happening. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing the construction apps play middleman.
Agreed. I mean, it's natural, right? You've got somebody that's using them, using a piece of technology. It's just a natural path of least resistance, right? They're there. They need something. Whether the company takes on their own in-house way to service those clients, or they become a middleman. It's all in service of the client. It's like the client, and if there's demand. A lot of demand, something has to be done. I mean, QuickBooks and Intuit is looking at this, and there's the demand and need for these services is far beyond the supply of people that are able to do the work, and so that's not good for them. They need to make sure that there's quality people and that they can service their end client. Otherwise, they're going to have problems. So it's interesting to watch for sure.
I think I saw on QuickBooks Connect for one of the stats on the main stage. For every 500 new businesses that are started. I don't know if this is North America or just U.S. There's only one new accountant or bookkeeper basically entering the market.
Yeah, it's
so
the numbers.
There's plenty of work for everybody.
Plenty of work.
So
I know there was a stat that came out: 40 or 44%. Forget which was 44. Percent vacancy rate in financial service positions in Western Canada, which means they just don't have people to do the work that's required in business even. So it's a great time to be an accountant with skills, great time to be a bookkeeper with skills and training and experience. And so there's no shortage of business out there. But yeah, it makes people nervous. The way to counteract that, get educated, know what it is, know how it can help you, how it's going to impact you, and great dialogue.
The one good thing where I think this is going to help everybody across the board, and using your minivan example, right? That engineer at Honda rode around in that minivan. He really understood the pains of driving in a minivan, right? And he went back and they implemented fixes for all these things that were hard to do in a minivan. I don't know, like opening the back hatch, and now it's automated, right? Through a remote control or a foot wave or something, right? Kind of the same thing. Now that Intuit and QuickBooks is being a bookkeeper, right? All the things that maybe you as a bookkeeper or an accountant have complained about QuickBooks that have not been fixed for a decade because they just never felt the pain, they're now going to feel the pain of these things. And so you're probably going to see a drastic improvement in the product.
I agree.
Right? And so, which will make everybody will get that victory. But Intuit probably would never fix these things until Intuit's had the pain, like your minivan driver.
Your pain is now their pain, which is excellent news, right? It's going to improve the product. It's going to improve the ecosystem. The industry is only getting better. It's getting more professional. It's getting more mature. And that's good for everyone involved that's serious about helping the end user, because it's going to get better for the end user as well, which is our small business owners.
Yep.
Little shift of direction, but I'm curious, cool apps that you're seeing right now that you think are something our listeners should be paying attention to.
Oh man, I feel like all I do is look at podcast apps lately. I think one that's not financially related is Canva. I think it's super, super easy. Think about cloud accounting, right? And you got the ability to work in your browser, work on your mobile device, or to collaborate with others. If you're doing any social media or advertising marketing, Canva is essentially a way for you to create cool images for any production and printing stuff you need to get done. It's all done through the browser. You can collaborate with other people. It has thousands and thousands and thousands of templates. Out of the box, it has a bunch of clip arts ready to go, or not clip art, stock photos, right? So instead of you having to go to 10 sites to put together a flyer, you just do it all from within Canva. So I think that's something that a lot of people are not aware of, and it's very affordable. And I think everybody's always trying to market their accounting firm or bookkeeping practice, right? Here's an easy way to build out some templates, and you can quickly create media, right? Images for your social media. You can create flyers, banners, PowerPoint slides in there now, CD covers, you name it, you can create it in there.
Beautiful. I love that app. We've actually done a little bit of just a demonstration of the use of it for our bookkeeping audience. And one of the ways I love using it is if you do have a graphic designer, it's going to save your graphic designer a ton of time, because part of the challenge is collaborating with anybody is getting the message and translating what you want to them. They don't read minds. They need to know what you need or what you want, maybe some ideas. So Canva is an incredible place just to even go and spitball your idea of what you want for a brochure, for whatever you're trying to get designed. Give that over to your graphic designer and say, hey, put a bit of polish on this and work with this. That'll save you time, money, and energy. And Canva's so easy to use. It's incredible. What a tool.
Yeah. And even better than sending it over to them, you just invite them. Just like your clients invite you to their QuickBooks or their Xero file, you invite your designer in, and they just do the fit and finish and just clean up your base design, right? Or they just build you templates, right? And then you just build off of those.
Exactly. I've never thought of actually collaborating inside of Canva. Is that new technology or something that's been around for a while?
It's been there as long as I've been using it.
Okay.
So 2.5 years or so. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'll check that out. I'll try that out. Great recommendation. And if anyone's interested in seeing a little bit of a quick demo in that, just go into the resources section in the Successful Bookkeeper community portal and check out that free resource. It's a pretty cool tool. Save you a ton of time. I can't help but ask for another one because you got so
I know
many.
I get constantly asked, like, what are the top 10 apps or what's the best this app? And it's hard to pin down because there's just constantly so many. I'm just like loosely trying to
what do you love? The things the apps you're loving using for your business, your life.
I can tell you my stack, and then not all these are going to be all bookkeeping related, but just kind of the whole tech stack of things I use. So I use QuickBooks Online, paired up with AutoEntry, which AutoEntry probably does the majority of my work. I will use QuickBooks Online to type invoices, to create sales, but everything else I put in QuickBooks Online goes through AutoEntry, and it automatically data entries that into my QuickBooks Online. I use OnPay for payroll. I'm using Brex card. I have a Divvy card. I had a Spritz card, but they went under. I have a Relay Bank card. I think it's relayfi.com. So I have that. They're a Canadian company. I have a couple different spending cards. I'm using Canva, as we just discussed. I use Social Pilot for doing social media type posting. I've been fiddling around with, there's a dashboard called Octoboard that I fiddle with because it's cheap. It's like $5 a month. And I kind of find it interesting to, if you're going to put your clients on a dashboard and maybe they're going to use it or not, you don't want to be paying a $70 a month dashboard app, right? Mm-hmm. So I've been fiddling with that. I use LivePlan, a little bit of the basic financial forecasts that are in LivePlan. I've been using that a lot. And then obviously like all the Office 365 and all the Google Docs, use those. I use an app called Favro, which is really for workflow and processes. So it's similar to a Trello board, or I think Asana. Is it Asana or Asana?
Asana.
Asana. Okay, yeah.
There's
Asana.
probably one called Cello too.
I think there's called
probably
Cello.
one called
Cello
too.
I think there's one that looks and tastes the same way. So it's similar to that type of workflow.
Yeah.
I use Process Street, which is interesting. And then I connect a lot of things up through Zapier. Process Street is a good one because I've had a learning with that. I think everybody talks about, and you've talked about this in your own podcast, about systemizing your processes.
Yeah.
Right? And I always feel like that's easy to say and harder to do. And I went through an exercise, and this is when I was still at Intuit. I was doing something every single week, and I had like 4 hours of clicking involved, copy, pasting, clicking to get something done every week. And so I wanted to have like a virtual admin or somebody else do the work. And so I documented everything. And then the person still made some mistakes. And so then the next step, because I had it documented, it was very easy to automate. And so my lesson here is like, documenting processes and automating processes are like two separate things, right? You cannot automate them unless you document them. And Process Street's nice is because you can document in there, but you can actually start building out fields and values and workflows, right? And then you can connect those as triggers to your Zapier and trigger off other automations. But I would have never been able to do that if I didn't document first. And I think that was because I think it's easy to try to automate straight out of the gun, but it's better just to document the whole process, then start going through what can I automate, because then if you get to a blocker of something that can't be automated, you already have the manual step there.
That's right. And if I think the way the mind works too, there's so much in our brains that we think that it's simpler perhaps than it really is. When you document it, you go, whoa, there's a lot of steps here. And there's even more because you're still missing some. So then you can actually look at that and go, what can I automate? And if you didn't, man, you got spaghetti. And if it breaks, right, it's like it'll take you a lot of time to go and try and find where it broke. And
then if you only automate 10% of it, it doesn't matter because the rest of the steps are there. And then another 2 months later, 4 months later, you automate another 2%. But the manual steps are still there. But if you have all these pieced together separate automations, it may not be the best route. So it was a big learning. Just document first and automate second. With that said, though, I have billions of things I want to automate that I never get to, right? Like that's the struggle of the century is like, how do you carve out that time to build out that automation, right? So you can actually save yourself some time.
No, for sure. It's, and that's part of the joy of being in business, right? For yourself, there's so many opportunities to improve and build and do these things. But at the same time, we've got to be having priorities and making sure that a solid plan and executing on that. Such a wonderful perspective, David, to have you on the show, being your, the history that you have with Intuit and technology, and now being a small business owner and that journey. I know we'll have you back to share your learnings and share what you're doing. And I really want to thank you for the work that you're doing to support accountants and bookkeepers, because at the end of the day, they're helping small business owners, and that's what makes our communities healthier, better, is when we have small businesses that are able to make their payroll and also put money in their pockets and feed their families and all that good stuff. So you're up to good things, and I, on behalf of our listeners, want to thank you for your generosity today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm genuinely a listener to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I genuinely listen to it. So thanks for having me on. Beautiful.
And we'll look forward to having you back.
Awesome.
And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. But don't go away just yet. We have some special bonus audio from the Cloud Accounting podcast, where David Leary and his co-host, Blake Oliver, interviewed QuickBooks Live bookkeeper Pam Bingham at the 2019 QuickBooks Connect San Jose conference. David and I thought this would be a valuable segment for you to learn more about what's going on with QuickBooks Live.
But so you have your own practice.
I do.
You're an enrolled agent. I don't know. What's a day in the life of being on QuickBooks Live?
It's great because you work with the small business owners and you help them with their books. You help them clean up their books and teach them good workflows. So it's a pretty good it's a pretty good offering, and it's a pretty good opportunity to help small business owners.
So I think when we had Rich Priest on in the past, he talked about they send it
Former leader of QuickBooks
Yeah.
Live. They said they send you out a box. Like, so you get a laptop, do you get like a pop-up banner behind you? Like what's your experience? When you go from, hey, I'm doing my firm work now, and I put on my QuickBooks Live hat, like,
Yeah.
what do you do actually to do that?
Well, I take off my firm hat and I put my QuickBooks Live hat on. And no, they do. They sent you out a box that has all the equipment that you'll need, like a laptop and your camera, headphones, and yes, a wraparound so that you can, block the noise.
A backdrop for your chair?
The backdrop for your chair. So, it comes all ready to go, and then you're ready to go. You're ready to start training and going through and learning all their processes and that type of thing.
And how much of your time are you dividing between QuickBooks Live and your own, work as a pro advisor?
Well, you're required to work about 20 hours, at least 20 hours a week. So,
And how many clients do you work with?
it could be between 15 and 20.
15 and 20 clients on an ongoing basis, and about at least 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And is it, when you say it's about 20 hours a week, is it when you have time to pop in and out, like an Uber driver's like, I feel like going to do rides right now? Or is it, do you kind of have a little bit of a schedule?
No, you have a schedule. You have a schedule.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So you log in, and then you go to work, and how do you schedule appointments with clients?
Well, they are able to schedule the appointments with us.
Got it.
And so, and then you meet with your clients and you figure out what they need, and you provide that service. I mean, it's basically helping the clients have tax ready books, for the end of the year. So, I mean, you make sure that you prepare the necessary. Help them with their transactions and help them just kind of reconcile and wrap up the month, close the books. I mean, you build this relationship with the clients.
So coding those, getting those transactions into the GL, right? Categorizing them. You're reconciling the books as well, and you're also I understand part of the service is helping the clients understand their reports, right? Do you do that? Do you do that? Walk through the reports with them?
Well,
Or is that something they have to ask for?
Yeah, but that we're not. I don't give tax advice or anything like that.
But if I want to understand my P&L and walk through that,
I can walk you through your P&L. Definitely do that. Yeah.
Do you actually do other things like help them set up their bank rules?
Yes.
You do things like that?
Yes. Okay. Set up bank rules and recurring transactions and stuff like that.
How did you get into the program?
I did hear about it, like everyone else, and they reached out to some of the tax folks and asked us if we'd like to come on board.
Oh, great, because you were at TurboTax Live.
Yeah.
So have you switched over completely? Or are you
I
still
have.
Got it.
I have left that world.
So Pam, one thing that struck me yesterday or Tuesday at lunch was you have an existing real bookkeeping practice. You're a traditional pro advisor to some extent, right?
I am.
And you are very comfortable with the idea of QuickBooks Live.
I am.
And there's some providers that are not comfortable with it. And can you explain where your comfort level is and where it fits in your view of all the clients you have or don't have or might take?
Well, for me, my practice is, and it's kind of probably difficult to understand. I have a full practice, for me. Let me explain that.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I vacillated. Do I want to, how far do I want to grow my practice? And I've had it for about 8 years, almost 8 years. And it has grown since I started it, and it's gone up, it's gone down, it's changed. I've changed the way that I work with clients. But for me, this opportunity that came along with QuickBooks Live was kind of like a fill in the blank type of situation.
Because you're doing mostly tax work. Is it with your own practice?
Yeah, I have more tax clients than I do bookkeeping clients. That is correct.
Got it.
And so it's kind of fill in the blanks, yeah. And then give me an opportunity to be a part of this service that it's new. It's new. So why wouldn't I want to do it now if I'm going to participate?
Right. You're an early adopter. You're a trailblazer.
Right.
That's really cool.
And so one thing that I think I've never even considered before is it was always presented as you think, oh, if I have some downtime, I could do QuickBooks Live on the side to supplement my practice. But I think if I just heard you correctly, is QuickBooks Live's letting you stabilize your practice because your practice is a little variable.
Sure.
But now with QuickBooks Live, you're like, hey, I know 20 hours a week is going to be stable. I'm going to have income. I'm going to have X number of clients. It's pretty stable. The demand's going to be stable. And my practice can be the variable. Versus
Right.
I think some people always thought like, oh, QuickBooks Live would be the variable thing. Like, yeah, I'll pop in 8 hours a week. I'll do some QuickBooks Live and do it in my practice. But it was interesting. You just changed my perspective on this.
Yeah. Yeah, I can only answer why I do it. I don't
That's
know
all
why
we wanna
other
know.
people do it. I mean, I'm sure there's bookkeepers that work there that probably don't have clients or don't have the means to get other clients. I'm capable of building my practice as far as I want to build it, whichever way I want. Now, it's probably not fair to say, but I think if you want to do it, you can do it. But I determined for myself that this is the route that I wanted to go. I saw it as a good opportunity, and again, early adopter, and then they just have really great opportunities for you to grow and grow with the company if that's what you choose to do.
Wonderful.
What would be an example of a QuickBooks Live engagement? So the customer sets the appointment, they get on the phone with you, and like, what are they asking?
Well, I mean, it's just like any other customer who needs help with books.
Okay.
I mean, it really is no different. The only difference is, we have parameters in that we can't take every client. Well, who would? I mean, I don't take every client, but I probably take.
I think there's a lot of firms that try to take every client. And that gets them in bad situations.
Yep.
I probably would take on different situations that QuickBooks Live would not. But it's startup that doesn't know what to do and handle it, and so you can get them set up and teach them how to manage this thing so that they can know where they are financially all the time. And that's kind of the goal, right, with bookkeeping.
And I like how, so Intuit's offering QuickBooks Live bookkeeping kind of at the purchase point of QuickBooks Online.
Yes.
So in theory, and the hope and the theory is from day one, they're in QuickBooks Online, they set an appointment, and from day one, they're starting to set things up correctly, right? Which just helps everybody down the funnel eventually. If they grow to a big, huge company and they move on out of QuickBooks Live to another bookkeeper or pro advisor, their books are actually set up and they're actually usable.
Right. Instead of the way that I sometimes get clients where I'm like, okay, well, did you have help doing this? Well, I just thought I'd figure it out. And,
That's the classic desktop QuickBooks situation where the bookkeeper doesn't get involved until 14 months later, and they have to untangle a year
or two.
And this is hopefully eliminating that situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of giving business owners a head start to really move out of the space that they really don't need to be in. They need to be in a space where they're growing their business and delegate. And it's hard to do it. I mean, you know it. I mean, even everyone who has a business, it's hard to delegate. It's hard for me to delegate. So this gives them an opportunity to work on their business, focus on their business, and let QuickBooks Live handle their books.
Do you do any QuickBooks Live work offline? So like for the client, because if you have real clients, you talk to your client, you have a meeting, you're done. You might for an hour do work in their QuickBooks file or something. Is that model exist with QuickBooks Live? So you just do whatever you do real time when you have face-to-face video with them?
Oh, no, I mean, you during whatever time frame that you're working for QuickBooks Live. I mean, so it doesn't have to be just face-to-face. I mean, you can do it offline with not talking to the client, yes.
Okay, so you are doing some sort of bookkeeping work behind the scenes?
Yes.
It's not all live client interaction? Okay, that's interesting to know. I did not. I'd never...
That's one of the questions we had, actually. I'm glad you asked that, which is, is it only with the client, like holding their hand, or is there an offline component, which Dave is talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. And I assume like you wouldn't need to be on the phone live with the client while you're hitting reconcile, right?
No.
Yeah.
No,
that may not be productive.
No, we would not.
Yeah.
So what's the ratio you think as far as time you spend chatting video face-to-face with your client versus doing offline work?
I mean, usually if you have an appointment, so about an hour. Okay. Depending on the client, but typically it's an hour to go over, review whatever it is that you're reviewing with the customer.
What's the longest client call you've had?
An hour-ish.
Okay, that's not bad. I was thinking like somebody could keep you on for like half a day.
An hour-ish.
An hour-ish.
No, that, I mean, but how does that help the client anyway? If you're on with them for half a day,
Right.
what could you possibly do?
Good point.
That's true. Are you starting to recognize like repeat clients or seeing the same faces to where you're getting to know these clients a little bit?
Oh, this is a relationship that you're building. I mean, the goal is to have this client to help them keep their books in order.
These are not just one-off calls.
No.
And
It's not like an
requests for
Uber
work.
driver. Where it's
No.
This is an ongoing relationship with,
Yes.
you said, like 20-something clients. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This has been super helpful. So,
Really? Okay.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you so much for helping us understand how it works. It's one thing to hear about the program from the leaders. And it's another thing to talk to somebody who's actually doing it. So thank you so much, Pam, for joining us.
You're very welcome.
I hope you enjoyed the bonus audio. Check out the Cloud Accounting Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and visit cloudaccountingpodcast.com. Thank you for listening to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. Have a great week.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.